This week on the Beginner Photography Podcast, we talked to Andrew Billington about how he went from passion to pro photographer. He boils down how to find a style and why the Fuji camera system is the best system for him, but it might not be for you.
This is this week's Beginner Photography Podcast. Raymond, what's been going on this week, man?
Dude, man, it's hard for me to think right now. I'm just so excited about today's interview. This week, I had a complete computer meltdown. I luckily didn't lose a single file because backups are very important to me. And all that money that I've spent on hard drives in the past, I can now throw in the face of my wife when she says, "Why are you always buying all these hard drives?" I'm just kidding. She's always really supportive. But finally, it happened. I had both hard drives in my computer just completely go kaput. And I had to just simplify it and just go with one much larger drive. It's a solid state, so it was pretty expensive, but speed is really the name of the game here, which is why I went with that. Plugged that in, haven't had a single issue. It's been like 9 days. It's been fantastic. And like I said, luckily I wasn't in the middle of any big projects that required any sort of time-sensitive work. So luckily it worked out pretty well. How about you?
Last weekend was great. Catherine and I went down to Virginia.
That's right. How was that?
Just outside DC. Yeah, Catherine had I guess a training race leading up to her 100-mile race. It was the North Face Endurance Series Challenge. She did 50 kilometers. The weather started with heavy rain, went to sleet, had some snow, was hailing at one point, and then back to just cloudy gray. She spent about 30 kilometers in mud, and she looked the part too. It was good. I got to work on some personal project stuff on ultra runners while we were there, so I was really stoked. And yeah, this week I've just been hanging out with a local Toronto mixed medium artist who does oil canvas paintings, very well known on the painting circuit. So cool. And later this week, I'm taking my inaugural trip in my RV for the night.
Yeah. Wait, just for the night?
Just one night. We're going to just test things out, see how everything works. I haven't even made the bed yet. I don't even know how to make the bed in the RV. I want to be able to, put the bed together, start the propane, the stove up, see how everything besides driving works.
I love it, man. That sounds like a blast. That's going to be a ton of fun. That'll be like a mini vacation.
Mini vacation.
Mini minis.
Mini vacation. Mini minis.
I think you're going to have many vacations. Many. Anyway, you know what has also been fantastic is our newsletter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
So far, the update is that people have been loving the newsletter. We've gotten a little bit of a response from people who are talking about the 5 tips and how it's really helping them improve their photography.
Awesome.
And it seems like, they look at these things and they say, why didn't I think about that? A lot of times it's just the simple things that you don't think of that always have the biggest impact on you and, your photography. And I think that this is one of them. It really is something that you're going to be able to look back on and see where you improved upon the most. So people are loving that newsletter. And if you haven't downloaded it yet, you really should head over to our website, thebeginnerphotographypodcast.com. Huge banner up at the top. Just go ahead and sign up. You're going to subscribe to our newsletter where we send out more great tips weekly with new podcast episodes and little behind the scenes, little information of our podcast as well. So if you don't want to miss any of that, and of course, like I said, the biggest takeaway, our 5 quick tips to taking better photos today, then you need to go ahead and download that and start sharing those photos on Instagram. Let us see them as well.
You get that 5 tips in a PDF. I've passed around to some local friends, and yeah, even newer photographers and experienced ones go, that's those tips, man. Those are so simple. You can do them every day, and it's simple stuff.
When I sent the PDF to this is kind of embarrassing, my mom, just to proofread, because it's always good to have more eyes on it. She immediately was like, I can do all of these things on my iPhone. And it's funny because now she'll send me pictures of like beautiful flowers around the house, and in no way, shape, or form is she any sort of professional photographer, but it seems like now she's enjoying photography more just because of these tips. So
that is awesome.
She's loving it. She's loving it.
You know who else really, really loves enjoying photography?
I'm going to guess that it's today's guest.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think this is the perfect time to go ahead and introduce Andrew.
Andrew Billington. Let's get into it. All right. So, Callum, today
Excellent.
we have Andrew Billington, who's coming from the UK. He's a documentary wedding photographer who has been gaining a lot of momentum after switching from Canon to Fuji, and was recently named one of the world's best photographers by International Wedding Photographers Society. So today we're going to talk about why it doesn't matter what he shoots with and why it matters how he shoots. So Andrew, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for that introduction. And I really agree with what you said. It doesn't matter what you shoot with; it's how you shoot. Absolutely.
Awesome. We have a lot of questions to get into for sure.
Do you think we should let Andrew introduce himself a little bit? Talk about his.
Yeah, of course.
Andrew, you take us away in a magic, of just yourself, man. Do it. Go for it.
Okay. I mean, well, I've been shooting full-time professionally for only, the last 7 years, which I don't think as a very long time in photography at all. But before that, I worked for 20 years in theatre.
Okay.
I was. I worked sort of front of stage and backstage, but I spent most of my time backstage because that way you can work 52 weeks a year, and the other way you work 5 weeks a year. So,
yeah, right.
But I came from theatre into photography, and sort of through a sort of circuitous route of picking up a camera while I'm in the theatre and just sort of documenting what was going on, and then being commissioned to do more of that, and slowly the balance to becoming a full-time professional documentary photographer. And I think if you have a camera and you're in a room and you're shooting professionally, at some point somebody's going to ask the question, do you do weddings?
Yeah, of course.
That's the only time they ever see a professional photographer really working. So they go, do you do weddings? And my answer to that always was, I will do, but the way I'll do them is like this, i.e. not orchestrating anything, just seeing what's going on, making interesting pictures. So that was my sort of, that was my sort of route into sort of wedding photography. I didn't know about documentary wedding photography. I didn't know about that long tradition, which is, I think it's a very sort of initially a sort of very sort of British thing with a long history of sort of people like Simon Atkins, Jeff Ascoff, Stephen Taylor, almost inventing the genre.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So I mean, when you started having people approach you, Andrew, regarding shooting weddings, and I'm sure it was an experience like Raymond and I when we had cameras. What made you want to initially go towards that documentary mindset, or I guess whatever the mindset you wanted at that time? What was the influence there?
It was one of those things. It was more sort of what I don't want to be, and I'd been at weddings and I was aware of what the idea of a wedding photographer was, which was that sort of annoying person that has to be at your wedding.
Yeah.
In order that you'll have some photographs, but it just keeps buzzing around and just being, just annoying everybody and saying, hey guy, everybody get over here, everybody clink champagne glasses, now everybody get over here, now everybody pick the bride up, now we're all going to go to the front of the building and do some confetti, and we're all going to come around the back and do a group shot. And literally the whole day was, in my mind, was about the photographer doing stuff so he get shots so he could fill an album, so he could sell you pictures afterwards.
Right.
And when I mean, it sort of goes back to when I got married, which was back in 1993. I know you look too young, but I got married back in 93, and the question of a wedding photographer came up, and I wasn't a photographer at this stage. I didn't know from photography, but my only thought was I just said to somebody to turn up with a camera on the day and be there. I don't really want to know that they're there. I just want them to just capture the day, and I didn't know that was a thing. And of course, when we got married, you know, we asked a few people, and they didn't understand. No, but I'm a wedding photographer. This is what I do. So
right.
in the end, we didn't really have photography at our wedding.
Oh wow! You just nixed the whole thing. You're just like
I couldn't find anybody because I just knew there was just. And I hate to say it, I just knew that there was just going to be this dick with a camera, and I just didn't want him
there. Yeah.
Just walking around. Everything you've just said makes it sound like you were trying to escape the pre-planned theatrical element
Absolutely.
of what a wedding photographer might do. You know,
Yeah. Well, to me, it seemed absurd to turn up to a wedding and then try and make everybody do this wedding that you've got in your head because you're already at a wedding. So why not just shoot that?
Right, it's already going to happen anyway, so why not just...
It is a wedding. You just got to photograph it. It's not like just because you've got these awesome shots in your head, or you think everybody should be, you know, somebody should be sort of, you know, the bride should be showing her garter, and somebody should be linking arms, drinking champagne. If it doesn't happen, it's still not. It still is the wedding.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where I was coming from when people started to say, you know, will you photograph our wedding?
You know, I do want to go into this in a bit, talking about what you're looking for when you're photographing, but I want to pull it back just for a second.
I'll just talk.
That's okay. That's all right. That's all right. You know, what was the moment, I guess, you know, when you had your camera, you're doing some stuff, I guess, maybe with the theater, that you decided to maybe leave your backstage theater job and go full-time? What was that moment?
Well, it's one of those things where I think I did have a sort of business head on, so I'd started shooting weddings, and I was doing that thing. I was working full-time, and I was also shooting weddings at the weekend. You know, I was shooting about 15 to 25 weddings a year, as well as working full time.
Wow!
And it came to, and I was serious. You know, it was one of those things because again, there could be a bad press about sort of like, you know, this whole pro thing about these weekend warriors coming in and stealing our things and, you know, being crap. And no, I was one of that. I think that's possibly, unless you've never had a job, that's how you get into it.
Yeah.
Unless you've never had a job on a photographer, that, you know, you do a job, you grow to like photography, and then that sort of takes over, and you think maybe I could make a living at this. So you're doing both at one point or another, and I think it's just how you approach that. If you approach both of them in as professional manner as you can and try and be as good as you can in both your jobs, that's cool. And then not just see it as easy money. That's where the bad thing comes on, where somebody just turns up and waves the camera around, shoots and burns, and gives somebody 3,000 unedited photos on a USB and goes, "Here's your wedding, just, you know, it's in there somewhere."
Yeah.
You know, that's so it's just about being professional, you know. And got to the point where I was getting enough weddings ahead of time that I could sort of say, well, there's a tipping point here. Either I continue working in professional theatre, or I risk it, and I've got enough bookings in the next 6 months that I'll be okay for 6 months. But then hopefully in that 6 months I can concentrate on it and make a business of it. Yeah. And I sat down with Rachel because, you know, I think you need to.
It's a pretty important talk. Yeah,
I think you decide to leave your partner on these sort of things rather than just come back, honey, and go, yeah, hi, honey, I've just given up the job and I'm now a photographer.
Yeah,
that's not going to fly.
You know what I love about that is that, we really cater to a lot of the people who probably haven't left their full-time jobs
Yeah,
yet. And a lot of them probably don't even plan on doing it. They just want to become better photographers in their everyday life, whether it is
yeah.
photographing their kids, or some of them do eventually want to become professional wedding photographers. But like you said, everybody has to start off with a job, and they are going to become the weekend warriors. And that's the only way that you're going to become a professional, because like you said, if you just quit one day having never shot a wedding and say, I'm going to do this, it's just not going to
Yeah,
work out. So
yeah. No.
believing that weekend warriors are ruining the industry is just
Ah,
completely wrong. And I
no.
don't even think that weekend warriors are a bad thing, because there are some people who enjoy the stable paycheck and are really good at their job. They
Yeah.
like the benefits, but they also love expressing some sort of creative side. And maybe they just want to shoot, a dozen weddings a year, and I see nothing wrong with that.
I think a really good example there is a past guest on our podcast, Tim, who's a firefighter in Texas.
Yeah, yeah.
He works, they do 24-hour shifts, and he also still has this really amazing, like, you go to his website, Tim Kyle, and got amazing wedding work, and that's his creative outlet,
Yeah, I think that a lot of like the full-time jobs that people have now, especially here in the US, they're very like, sit down, do this, don't talk to anybody, just focus on your work for 8 hours. And that's not who we are as humans, and that just kills
No.
us inside.
No.
But that like love for, maybe you got a few kids and you got a mortgage and you can't just give it all up, because being a photographer can be pretty unstable financially sometimes, and having that security is needed. But again, that creative outlet is just, is what makes some people, stops them from just, calling the whole thing quits and just, downing a bottle of sleeping pills or something like that. And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, okay then. So it sounds pretty important that they should shoot those weddings at the weekend.
Here in the U.S., work
So-
is not, I don't know. That went a little dark, I'll admit.
Yeah. We've gone to a really dark place, and I quite like it. Yeah.
Well, I guess
No,
now that
but
we're...
you're absolutely right. Absolutely, and there's nothing wrong. And as long as they realise that what they're doing, and that if they take what they're doing as a very important thing, because they're being entrusted by couples to photograph their wedding day. That's only going to happen once, and it's not a time for them to just have a nice weekend messing around and trying a few things out and seeing if it works and seeing if it doesn't. I think when you start a wedding day, or when you sort of say, I'm going to photograph somebody's wedding, you've got to be really solid and really clear on how how you want to work. Be confident in everything that you do with a camera. Know your camera inside out. There's a lot of things that you need to do before you even start thinking about that.
Okay, so I guess we're going to kind of go back to a little bit of a darker place here. Back when you were still shooting weddings with your Canon gear. I, as well, am a recent converter from Canon. All of my gear is gone, except for one camera that I still use for video because, it's just the best for video. But I recently switched to Fuji. I've shot only about half a dozen weddings with it. First with I found an X100, like the original one. I bought it. I just wanted to shoot, my kids, whenever we went out for adventures. I thought that it'd be a great camera. But I gave myself like a super cheap budget and said, you know what, if it can't work, then it just can't work. But luckily I found one for, I think it was less than $300. And
like 150 pounds.
Yeah.
170 pounds.
I was so excited when I got this thing, and even though the X100T was already out and I knew its limitations, I still took it out because I knew that at its core, photography is just aperture, ISO, and shutter speed, and that camera can control those things. So I thought that I'd be okay with it. And the minute that I put it to my eye, I was like, this is my future. Like, I know that I'm switching to this series of cameras, and it's going to change my life. And sure enough, it has. It's made me... I'm still trying to convince Callum to get himself a Fuji camera, because it just puts me in the moment like no Canon or Nikon has ever done before.
Yeah. Callum, get a Fuji. Get a Fuji. Just do it. Do it.
I'm
Well,
stuck in the
to be fair, he's really been wanting to, but right now his assets are stuck in another camera that just isn't being sold. So he's trying. He's trying. I'll give him that.
Yeah, I don't want to collect in a mass of cameras, so
No, no, you're absolutely right, and it's never the camera. I mean, I shot for years. I mean, nearly full time, nearly 5 years on Canon, and love. I mean, great. Really, it's just the camera that you know is the one that's the one that's the best. It's I mean, it is that thing of when the question is what's the best camera? It's the camera that's in your hand is the best camera. Absolutely, absolutely, and really, for me. I was never a sort of gearhead. It was just I'd use a camera, I'd work it and work it and work it, and just get the most I could out of it until it's sort of like I started with what you'd call a Rebel, a Canon,
Right? Yeah, of course.
yeah, a Canon Rebel. I just literally shot weddings with that and like a 10D and just worked it and worked it and worked it until I found. For what I wanted I needed a better ISO handling, so then I bought the next one. But I hammered those cameras. I just learned, I just got the most I could out of them until I couldn't get any more, and then I needed to upgrade. It wasn't that I thought if I buy a camera, if I buy the next camera or the newest camera, that's going to make better photographs. It just never is. It just never is.
Okay, well then that brings me into a question that I really want to ask you, which is, if you're shooting Canon all these years, and it's not the gear that matters, but you have to know it inside and out, at what point did you think, I'm going to switch to this, at the time, seemingly unproven camera system? How was it going through your head that this was going to, I guess, advance your photography?
Well, I bought the original 100X. And it was X100, and it was great camera. But I picked it up, I used it, and it just wasn't there for me then. So the AF wasn't fast enough. I wasn't getting the results I wanted out of it. So I literally bought it, used it a few times, put it down, and then when the X Pro came out, I picked one of those up and started using it, and I'd shot a lot of weddings by that point, and then I started using this camera, and it was fun. It started being fun. It had the rangefinder styling, and actually, if you used it optically, you got this great thing whereby what you were framing wasn't quite what you got out of the thing, because you had that differential between the lens and the eyepiece, and that was fun because you're not necessarily getting the exact results. And I think you've got to be confident to do that at shooting weddings. Sure. I can't. You just I'm just playing at someone. I knew I knew I was going to get the results, but actually it brought the fun back into shooting weddings for me too. And I really went full time with the Fujis just over 2 years ago when the XT1 came out. I immediately bought two of those on the day of release. I'll have two of those because I'd seen it in pre-release version and just seen the pictures, and everything that I wanted was on the top plate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to go into any menus. I didn't have to do any adjustment. I knew for the way that I worked that I had aperture, I had shutter speed, I had ISO all on the top plate, and I could walk around a room and not even be looking at the camera and make the adjustments needed to make while still looking at the scene. And that, for the way that I work, for the storytelling, documentary photography that I have, worked for me. So it was unproven, and it was a pig to use really when the Fuji started out, because until firmware version 4. Mm-hmm. It was, it had its idiosyncrasies. It was fairly slow to focus. It was at times, and then everybody that was talking to me about that, that was still shooting DSLRs, was going, "Oh, should I go across to the Fujis?" And I was going, "It's got to suit the way that you shoot, because it's not a DSLR, and it's never going to be."
Right.
But for me, it was a small camera, so when I put it up to my eye, it didn't obscure my face, which is quite important. Also, and this is the thing I thought I would never use, because I thought this is so consumer.
The tilt screen.
grab the tilt screen.
Yes.
The tilt screen. I was like, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not touching this tilt screen because I'm just going to look like an amateur.
Yeah.
And then I did the tilt screen with a wide lens on it and went, this is awesome. I can just hold it down at waist level, frame a scene, and you used it just like a
rangefinder
format camera. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And it's great. And nobody cares. You could just glance down. Because before then, I was doing that with the Canons, but I was literally shooting blind. I was holding it up, I was holding it low, and just thinking I've probably got it in frame here. And you got 80% by you, but the tilt screen, you're like, there, it's done. And I loved it. I loved it.
Follow-up question to that. Now that the X Pro 2 is out, is that going to hold you back from shooting at all, or are you going to change kind of your style around it?
Well, there's the X Pro 2, and it's cool. And I bought one just to try, and it's fantastic. So I then bought a second one, and now I shoot my weddings on X Pro 2s. Okay,
so again, back to the tilty screen.
There is no tilt screen. So
right.
I've got to adapt my shooting style, but I'll still throw things onto the back finder, but I'll literally just glance at it and just look at it at that angle because it hasn't got the tilted screen. Now, what would be quite cool, and if somebody's looking to make a product that's going to sell, just until they bring the XT2 out, it's if somebody makes a little hinged mirror that fits on the back, and it just reflects in. That would be the thing. That's what it needs. But in the meantime, I'm just loving using it because the second I pressed the shutter, it was so whisper quiet and felt so good. It was like, oh, that's good. It was like when as a Canon user, when I fired my first 1D series.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And it went foot, and it was like, oh. This in that strange. It took me right the way back to the beginnings of photography when I went, this feels like a professional's camera.
Okay, so then
I can look like a professional with it.
So follow-up question to my follow-up question: if it's not the gear that matters, if you loved the XT1, if all that you needed was what was on the top of the camera, then you love the tilty screen, then why switch to the X Pro 2?
Because I'm inconsistent.
Okay.
No. The serious answer is, I think that the quality of the files that are coming out of the X Pro 2 are slightly better. I mean, I got fine for 2 years with using the XT1s, and they're fine. But and its handling of high ISOs. So I shoot as much as I can in available light is better. I get about one extra stop just on the ISO, so I'm very happy to shoot up to 12,800 on the X Pro 2s, whereas I only shot up to 6,400 on the XT1s.
That's so awesome. So awesome from such a small sensor that we can reach such high ISOs and just...
Yeah, I mean, some people don't like it. Some people don't like the noise that it sticks in, but I don't mind that noise at all, and it works for the look that I have, so...
Yeah, if it comes down to missing the moment and having a grainy photo, I'm always going to pick having a grainy photo.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. The moment beats anything else. You got to be there to get the moment. But if you can get the moment technically perfect as well, then
A+.
then that's your career source.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that with my style, I try to get everything right in camera as well. I'm going to admit it, that, and it might be kind of I don't want to say a taboo, but like a shocker for a photographer, that I don't really know Photoshop. People come to me and they're like, oh, can you just Photoshop this out? Can you Photoshop that out? And I really don't spend any time in Photoshop, aside from like some graphic stuff, which is, again, the complete wrong application to be using. I don't really bring my photos ever into Photoshop.
Well,
I always try to... Yeah?
No, all I was going to say is I'll let you into a secret. I don't own Photoshop.
Okay, right on. Perfect. Then this is going to make sense, is that, the reason why I switched to Fuji was that my goal has always been to get it right in camera. I kind of came from the world of video where you have so much less ability to work with the files after the fact. So getting it right in camera was just dire importance. And that's how I brought over my style into my wedding photography. So I found that basically come after a wedding, I do lots of batch edits. I go through, you know, at the end of it and just make sure that nothing really got screwed up. And then I make any sort of small corrections, and I can do it all within Lightroom.
Yeah.
So that like these smaller not file sizes weren't smaller, but the like the files, it's the sharpness, it's the richness, it's the colors, and like you said, it's being able to control everything without having to go into any menus, without having to, it takes out like almost all feeling of like digital. It still feels like, you know, this old Pentax K1000 that I have right here. It gives me the same feeling, and that little quirk of the rangefinder feel, where it's just slightly off from the actual image that you get. You know, I really resonate with that. It makes me excited because that reminds me of when I was shooting with film, that excitement that you get when you shoot. You have to wait for the film to develop, and then you can finally see the photos. I love shooting a wedding through the rangefinder, you know, rarely checking a file just to make sure that, you know, exposure's good and that nothing's screwed up.
Yeah, no, I don't have I don't have previews on or anything like that after the fact, because that'll drain the battery. But you don't need to see it back. Hopefully, you know you've got it right because you're looking at it. I think I get it right in camera because also I'm shooting just JPEG.
Wow. So, okay. We're gonna. I'm sure Callum's got a lot of questions about that.
What are you doing?
That's a crime. That's number one. That's the most unprofessional thing you can do is shoot JPEG.
No. See, I think that there is a huge misconception about shooting JPEGs and shooting RAW, because up until this point, I mean, digital photography is still a relatively new thing. I mean, the internet's only been around for about 20 years or so, and digital photography has been around about half that time, maybe a little bit more. So camera makers are finally able to get in the amount of detail that they want in these JPEGs to be able to deliver something good and consistent, whereas before, like, they really worried about compression because memory cards were, 16 megabytes, and they really had to, focus on things like that. But now that's no longer an issue, so they're putting in a lot of work into the JPEGs.
And when you hear the excuse from people that, oh no, you have to shoot RAW because then in Lightroom you get 5 stops of correction.
Right.
I just think, how bad are you? You're taking a photograph that you're 5 stops out.
I was.
Sorry, Callum. We seem to have hit a nerve there with Callum. Sorry, man.
No.
What I was going to say is, there's two school of thoughts. When anyone ever asks me about this raw JPEG thing, I ask them what their intent is, for final output. And what I say to them is, when I shoot a wedding, and I'm shooting on D750s, and they're pretty well known to be able to recover shadows, 3-4 stops without any issues. I purposefully, and I admit it freely, I probably underexpose a stop because I like the way it looks once I bring it back up later. Mm-hmm. I have no problem with that, but that's in like my professional work with the intent that I'm going to do it later.
Yeah.
And not only that, but that's your style. That's the style that you have come to love and adapt, and you have found a shooting style to match what it is that you see on a screen and like.
Exactly.
Some people feel great, if they're shooting RAW or they're shooting RAW and JPEG, but they know they've got the RAWs as backups. They find, there's a bit of comfort, there's a bit of solace in that if something should screw up enormously, at least they're covered, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah,
I think that's good. I think you should shoot with confidence, and if that gives you confidence, do it. There's never any right and wrongs in photography.
Right.
There's no absolutes. It's all about personal preference and personal style. So whenever anybody means it, oh, that's wrong, you shouldn't do that, I just think, no, well, just block that person. They don't know what they're talking about.
This is really, you mentioned this about no rights and wrongs, because even in the last few months where Raymond has been hounding me to pick up a Fuji, and I've been waiting for the perfect, either a used S to come on the market or I can get a good deal on a T. I want that camera because I don't want to have to worry about what I do later. I want to be able to just capture that moment, and I'll probably shoot in JPEG with the 100T or the S, and I'm probably going to end up just exposing for the image at that time and not underexposing
Yeah.
to deal with it later. I want it as a camera that captures real, authentic moments in my kind of non-professional life. So, you know, I'm out with friends, I'm out adventuring.
Yeah.
That's one style, and that's intense, you know, and it's fine to shoot JPEG, even if I were to later make that a canvas, you know, really huge. Later, you know, in my professional work, I purposely use RAW to underexpose for certain aspects. And you know, and everyone goes nuts, like, no, even beginners taking pictures of their kids, you know, should use RAW. And I'm like, no, not really.
I think
Yeah,
this
really,
has been
really?
kind of
But,
pushed
yeah.
by another, you know, rather well-known photographer who might have a lot of hair, I guess we can say.
Donald Trump?
Something like that. He's a big proponent of always shooting RAW, but I think that we basically covered this exactly. It's all about what is your intent afterwards, as well as what is your shooting style.
For me, although it's a wedding and I only get one shot at it, I'm shooting JPEG because I'm been doing this long enough that I could generally nail my exposures. I know exactly what I'm doing, and then after the day when I get those files into Lightroom, I've got my presets set up for dealing with JPEG files. And also for me, the JPEGs out of the Fuji cameras are just glorious.
Oh man,
they're wonderful. I mean, they've spent so much time and research and development on developing that JPEG engine that's inside those cameras that it would be a crime not to use them.
I agree.
Most of the discussion on the internet about Fuji cameras is how the hell you deal with the RAW files and make them look good.
Yeah, no, I mean that's totally true. That's a very good point. I still kind of struggle with sharpening RAW files.
Yeah.
I shoot both JPEG and RAW at weddings. Now I'm trying to get more comfortable with delivering JPEGs, but like you said, I always have the RAW backup just in case. You know, for some reason the camera underexposed 5 stops, and I need that.
There was a fantastic moment, but you know, because when I shoot, I don't have camera straps. I just use the Black Widow belt holders. And
I love
just
it.
have
Yeah,
one on each hip. If you pick it up and suddenly you knock your exposure compensation dial down 3 stops, click because you. And if you've got the RAW, you can pull it back.
Yeah, exactly. We've all been through moments like that when, especially when having 2 cameras and you can't constantly be changing the settings on both. Maybe you go outside, you have a wider lens on one, and but it's all about trying to foresee those moments that are happening and try to adjust for them. But we're going to stop talking about Fuji, even though I want to forever.
No, because it leaves Callum out and he'll be sad.
What is a Fuji?
I guess where the next thing that I think that a lot of our listeners are going to want to know is that, you do have a lot of acclaim, you do have a lot of awards, and your work speaks for itself. Like, it warrants this sort of attention that you have received. It's just fantastic. So a lot of people want to know how to, a lot of people want to get I don't want to say as good as you because I guess that implies some sort of emulation, but people want to be very confident in their photography. They want to have a style that's there. Yeah. So what is it that you look for when you go to a wedding? And I guess just like describe the perfect Andrew Billington photo. Yeah. If that's a thing.
Get on it.
Easy questions. It's a softball.
Easy question. That's fine. No, I mean, I'd wind that back a bit about what I look for when I'm wedding. I'd say, first of all, for people to feel confident and when they approach the day, it's, for me, the key was finding my style, actually finding the way that I wanted to photograph, because I think when you start out, you drink in photography, and there are so many influences from everywhere, and then you think, the next wedding I'm going to do that Jerry Kahana shot, I'm going to do that that Susan Stripling shot, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and you become this magpie, and then you try to impose those photographs and that other people's style on the photographs that you take. That's just reverse engineering a wedding and reverse engineering your style. I think what you have to do, and it took me a bit of time to sort of stumble across this, was basically you have to find your style and find the philosophy that you have behind the way that you want to shoot.
Okay.
If you develop a philosophy, if you say, I mean, my philosophy very much is to tell the story of the day, to not illustrate what happens, to actually shoot in a way that you're making quite simplistic photographs with clean backgrounds and a very simple story and a very strong emotion in each frame. And to do that, and actually most of my photography is led by light. I'm always, as soon as I walk into a room, I'm looking at where the light is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, right, all right, okay, there's light over there. That's where the awesome photos are going to be. That's where I'm going.
So then you just wait for something to happen in that spot and then capture that?
Well, generally they'll you know, all right, if there's nobody over there, probably I won't go over there. But you know, generally rooms are filled or places are filled. There's going to be stuff happening everywhere. I mean, I am slightly guilty of, you know, if there's a whole group of people sat in really bad light and the rest of the room is sat in great light, I'm probably going to photograph most of the rest of the room and not do a great deal with these guys that are sat in this terrible light in the corner, because I'm not necessarily making a visual record of everybody that was at that wedding.
Of course.
But also, I know that at some point those guys are going to move and they'll go somewhere else and they'll probably be in good light. So it's going to happen. It'll even out. I've never had anybody come back to me and say, "Oh, we haven't got a photograph of so and so."
Oh, that's good. That's good. A lot of people do get that.
But I'm not actually consciously ticking people off through the day. I mean, it says I put this little phrase in my contract, but you know, I think as soon as you start quoting a contract, you know, my contract says this. Oh, you turn up a wedding and say, "Oh, my contract says I have to have a meal." That's it. You know, you've lost the wedding. You know, you go to the bridal group and quote the contract. Now, just put some food in your car, you cheapskate. But anyway, back to the point. It's about finding your style. So I knew that was my style. Was that very sort of photography-led, image-led, emotion-led storytelling, and I really embraced that when I suddenly discovered and started shooting with prime lenses.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Because suddenly, because when I started out, I was like, oh, wedding photography, you shoot with a 24-70 or 70-200. That's how every wedding photographer shoots. Mm-hmm. And very quickly, I discovered that no, what I was doing then was working around the outside of weddings, because I had a 70-200. I could stand on the outside and shoot in.
And just get lazy, yeah.
And what I wanted to do, rather than shoot from the outside in, was to get in the middle of weddings and just shoot from there. Because when you're in the middle of a wedding, it works so much. I could get the shots I was looking for. So as soon as I discovered primes and was basically working with a 24 and an 85, mm-hmm. that was my style. That I knew. And then I just, again, for a whole season, I shot 35-85. The next, literally, 30 weddings, 40 weddings, 35-85. Got to know those lenses really, really well.
Yeah.
Where I needed to be, how they worked. I didn't buy any more lenses, any more kit. And then the next season, I shot 24-85, and that worked. But I think you need to do that, find that style, and then once you've done it, and you know that you're getting the pictures that you wanted. You can then, that's what you show on your website. That rule number one, only show the photos you want to shoot.
Exactly.
So if you've got a website, only put on the photos that you want to shoot, and then the people that want those photos will find you.
Making your life a whole lot easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. My website is designed to as much to put off brides as it is to attract them. On my website, there's no group shots, there's no portraits. So any bride that wants, a photo shoot on a wedding day is going to look at my website and go, "This isn't the guy for me." And I don't get those brides. I get the brides that are attracted by the fact that they don't want to pose for photographs. They want somebody there just to capture the day, and they seem to be attracted by the emotion that they see in the photographs that I show. And then when I turn up on a wedding day, I'm not having to ask, how do you want me to photograph the day?
Mhm.
I know they want me to photograph the day in the way that I want to.
Right.
And I think that's rule number one for starting out, and from day one, you know, it takes it takes time to find what style you want. It is, you know, whether you love doing wow shots, whether you love doing portraits, whether you like to be a documentary photographer, whether you want to be a little bit of both, and I think that's the harder nut to crack. But you know. But once you've decided and discovered what your style is, then you just do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you don't do anything else.
That is, I think this is so, you know, interesting to hear, because what I noticed a lot, Andrew, is I'm looking through your black and white wedding post. I think it's one of your more recent ones, and I went, you know, he is not someone who poses couples, but he has portraits of the couples in that blog post.
There's portrait in that whole blog. There's one portrait.
Yeah, but you would never think, one, the posed one is a posed portrait, and two, you have portraits, you know, I guess I'm going to use that loosely, in a much more candid and natural sense.
Yeah.
There are intimate photos between the couple. There's one very tight photo where she's looking at him and you can't see his face.
That's the only portrait. That's the only time when we said, let's take 10 minutes and take some shots together.
See, and even that, I thought that was maybe just in passing somehow.
All I do for my portraits is I find some nice light, and I just say, guys, just chat.
Right.
All I do is I'm going to put you in some nice light, and then you just have a nice chat. I mean, and the only time I'll step in is if occasionally you'll see couples talking about insurance or the gas, or did they turn off the, you know, and then you go, yeah. I'm going to say, have a chat, but about nice things. That's the only direction I'm going to give them. So that's the only portrait in that post, and the rest that look like portraits are just candid moments from the day.
Which I think is so impressive. Is what I was trying to get at. Is just, you know, you had this. There's one, and they're just holding on to each other, and you can see them from the back, and you can tell they're in an open space with other guests and whatnot. But it's beautiful. Like you posed.
They were just in the reception. And I think I sent that picture to be on the homepage for this, so hopefully people can see it. But they were literally they just walked back in. I was just walking behind them, and I saw they just had a little moment, and
you nailed it.
They weren't aware that I was there. I was shooting wide. I was shooting 24mm. They have a little kiss, and that's it. And that's the moment. And I really love that photograph, because, you know, I've tried to get that photograph probably at every wedding I've ever done, and out of 350 weddings, that's the first time it's worked.
Well,
really that well, but it's always worth trying. You know, there are other versions of that I've done for other couples that aren't as good, but they were just standing in great light. They were separated far enough from the people that, using a shallow depth of field, you could get that sense of separation and intimacy between them, even though they were in a room full of other people. I'm probably going to use that photograph a lot because it's really nice.
It is a really amazing photograph. If I were you, I would use it for everything as well.
Just everything.
Fine. That's the only photo I'm going to show now. That'll be it. But and again, you know, to the second part of your question, what is that sort of ideal Andrew Billington photo? It is that. It is a moment of emotion between people where they're actually unaware of me, possibly unaware of other people, and just in that moment. And when you get, and it's a very great thing to be able to, and you feel quite honored to be able to be there and capture those moments and share those with people. You know, it's really lovely. That's what makes the job great. And you know, when I think it's great it's a lovely job to be invited to people's weddings, and the way I do it, just to hang out and just take photographs, it's fab. It's great. I can't think of anything better.
Yeah, no, I think that you basically did a fantastic job at just describing your style, and that does go back to figuring out your philosophy on photography.
Absolutely.
We did talk a little bit about finding your style and how hard it can be, because when you first pick up a camera and you first get into it, you don't know how to achieve the photos that you see, so you just
No.
basically have to try to emulate them, see if it works, and then see if if you like it enough to continue to kind of hone into your own.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I would say if you're picking up a camera and you're starting out, but your ambition is to be a wedding photographer, what I would say is don't look at wedding photography.
yeah, no, I
Just
completely agree.
just don't look at wedding. Look at anybody. Look at everybody else, because my influences are quite broad. I mean, I love people like Elliot Erwitt, Salgado. Sally Mann was a huge influence starting out. I mean, it's wonderful work. Guy Bourdin, the fashion photographer. There are so many great photographers that you discover, and none of them are shooting weddings.
Right. Yeah.
But if you bring that sensibility, that thought, that style somewhere in your head with you to a wedding, you're actually going to end up boiling it all up into your own style, rather than constantly looking at, because people pour and pour and pour, I think, over photography blogs and other photographers and things. So, and all they're doing, all those great photographers that you love, is boiling down other photographers into their wedding work. So go to the source rather than the result.
Sure.
Then you'll develop your own style.
Well, I think, unfortunately, I know the answer to this next question.
Yeah.
But we got to ask it for everybody. If you could go back and tell a much younger Andrew Billington anything about the world of photography that you know today, what would it be?
I would say the best way to succeed in photography is to learn business.
Okay, yeah.
You want to be a full-time photographer, you've got to be a good businessman. And it took me ages to actually learn the lessons of business, and actually I'm still learning them, and I'm still a bit rubbish at business, and I should be better, and I should be more hard-ass, but I'm too soft and lovely. But if anybody's watching this that's thinking of booking me to photograph their wedding, I'm not going to give you a discount. I'm not. Unless you ask. No, honestly, I'm not. I have
Sound
a
like
price.
a Canadian there for a second.
I have a price now, and I stick with it. So that's
you
fine.
do have to apologize now.
But I'd say learning business is the thing, because I mean there are some fantastic photographers that are terrible at business and they don't last. There are some terrible photographers that are great at business and they last.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and again, the best career is to be good at business and a good photographer.
Okay, so then I guess kind of catering an answer more towards the audience of people who might not one day even have aspirations to go into business for themselves.
Charlie has the answer.
He pooped in the potty, so
well done.
You can go ahead and answer while I go wipe his butt. I will be.
You go wipe his butt. I'll make this answer last a whole butt wipe.
Right on. I'll be right back.
Now, if I could say anything to the starting out in photography that was me, I would say just find your own style and then shoot that way, and then shoot some more, and then refine it, and then shoot some more, and then refine it, and then shoot some more. And if you shoot in your own way, in your own style, and you're happy with it, you're never wrong.
That's amazing. Just boil it down. Boil it down.
Absolutely. Just keep. Yeah. I mean, this is another reason for, if I talk about Fuji, this is another reason for going across to Fuji. When I was shooting with Canon, when I was starting out, I ended up, I had such gear. And then slowly I moved across to primes, and season after season I would get rid of stuff. So I ended up carrying less and less and less. And I can see at some point in the future, because I at the moment I shoot with two bodies because I shoot wide and I shoot a telly. I can see at some point in the future that I'll probably just shoot with one body and probably a 50mm lens, and that'll be it.
Wow.
I'm waiting to see that. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, so possibly a 35.
Yeah.
35.
Yeah, 35 is a good. It's the
It's a great focal length because you can get in close, but also you can take a scene in. 50 can be a little bit restrictive, but the thing with the 50 is it's sort of the focal length that your eye has. So shooting with a 50, it looks like the scene as if you were there.
Much wider, but with the same amount of compression.
Yeah.
No, that. From what I heard when I wasn't wiping a butt, that was a fantastic answer.
It was a really good answer. It was impressive.
I can't wait to go back and edit this so that I could hear the whole answer. But when I did come back and you were talking about making your kit smaller, I really loved that as well because it's so easy. And I think a lot of our audience is still in that new camera phase. What do I need? I need the remote trigger. I need a new tripod. I need every filter. I need some sort of crazy
at stuff online is great fun. And ordering stuff is fun, and waiting for Amazon to deliver it is fun. It's all good, but and I still have a ton of kit, and there is a ton of kit in my car when I go to every wedding because although I know the way I'm going to shoot, maybe something happens and I'm going to need to light a scene, or I'm going to need flash for something. Who knows? So there's always 3 stands, 4 flashes, some diffusers. There's a reflector. There's a whole load of stuff in my car.
You're a camera shop in a car.
But I never get it out of my car. But if I need it once for one wedding, then that's part of being professional. It's not having stuff. It's having stuff and not using it.
Yeah. It's realizing what's important.
Knowing you don't need to use it is part of my style.
There is some photographers who have so much gear and they find excuses to implement it into weddings.
Yeah, and if that's their style, it's great.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go back to. Yeah, I mean, it's the exact same thing. It's all about the style. There are a lot of photographers who do make an event, who make the wedding like a shoot, and that's fine because it's those clients. They want that. That's what it is that they want.
Some couples want to physically see where all the money is going.
Yeah,
They want to see, this is a guy that's brought so much kit that nobody at this wedding could possibly have that much stuff, and obviously they're the professional. I sort of went the other way around, and I was the guy at the wedding with the amount of stuff, and I think that's again, that's quite nice. I will say to couples, certainly when I started shooting with the Fujis, I don't so much now, but I would say to couples, look, I'm probably going to be the guy at the wedding that's got the least amount of camera gear.
Yeah, I've shown up to weddings and guests obviously have larger cameras than me, and they just look at so do you know where the photographer is? I haven't seen him in a while, and it's like, no, that's me. I'm the one with this tiny camera right here. And it's a very freeing feeling.
Yeah, I did that exactly at a wedding where iPhones everywhere. I had a guy at a wedding with a 1D Mark IV and a 300mm lens on it.
My goodness.
I said, are you shooting the wedding for the next field? What's going on there? But the thing was, he had it, and he wanted people to know that he had it because that was his hobby. That's cool.
Obviously,
That's fine. Yeah.
There's no way that you're going to be able to get around that, but
no, and I have no problem with guests or people having cameras or waving iPhones or iPads around. It can be a little annoying, but also it can be a nice framing device. So it's there, it's happening. Roll with it, because if you're going to let it eat you up inside, all you're going to think about that whole wedding is, God, I hate iPhones. I hate bloody iPads. Stop it.
Right. One of my favorite photos is always the bridesmaids taking selfies of each other.
Yeah.
I love that photo.
Well, I mean, it's a gift. If people are going to do that, it's lovely, and I'll spend all day photographing people taking selfies. It's great. They're setting themselves up. That's 5 people up the top done.
I will say that iPhones for selfies are fine, or photos. It's when people bring the massive iPads to weddings and get up in the aisle and
it can get in the way, and it can be a little bit annoying, but
That's where I become antsy with my life.
They're the couple's friends, so
Whatever.
you know, I'll take a photo of it and just show them that that some of their friends are dicks. It's fine.
It's very true.
I think we've had an amazing podcast, Raymond. Andrew, thank you so much. But before we go, I would like you to let us all know where we can go on the interwebs and find you.
Right. You can find my wedding site at www.documentary-wedding. You have to put a little dash in. documentary-wedding.com, just because I wanted to make it really awkward for people to find me.
And it's hard to deny what kind of a photographer you are.
That's exactly who you are.
Documentary-wedding. That's what I am. And I'm on Instagram at Billington. You can find me on Twitter at Billington Photo. And also, if you search Andrew Billington on Facebook or Andrew Billington Photography on Facebook, you can find me through there.
Awesome. We are going to link all of those on the show notes.
Brilliant. And if anybody has questions or wants to message me, I'm always happy to chat.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I know that we have a lot of listeners who do have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
They just don't know, a lot of times where to find the right resource for their questions, because at least here in the States, sometimes it feels like you only have one of two photography resources. One of them is YouTube, which everybody uses, and it's kind of universal. It's great for in-depth tutorials, but then the other one is just Pinterest, and it's not very easy to interact and have conversations on there. So I'm sure that our listeners are going to really appreciate the offer. So thank you.
Fabulous. Yeah, anyone can get in touch. And again, I've never been one of these photographers that it's not about holding on to knowledge and going, it's mine, I discovered it. It's like you put it out there, and hopefully everybody gets better, and we just everybody raises up. It's good.
I love it. Well, again, Andrew, I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time, and you have just made my dreams come true. So thank you so much.
Can I use a strapline on my website?
You've made my dreams come true, Raymond Hatfield.
I would love to do that.
Absolutely, I'll allow it.
Only if my quote can be, "Hi, I'm Callum Pinckney."
Yeah, absolutely. And my quote on your website will be, "Buy a."
Okay.
You heard it there, guys.
Okay.
We'll do it.
All right. Well, thank you again, Andrew, so much.
Yeah, thank you, man. We appreciate your time, and hopefully next time I'm in the UK, I will be able to find some time to come by for a beer.
Oh, that would be really good. Yeah, do.
All right. What a great interview that was, Raymond. What do you think?
I mean, we say this every single time, but I'm sure that our listeners could hear it, but I definitely fangirled in this intro. Andrew is one of those photographers who I've been watching for a long time, and was actually the first photographer who I ever heard was shooting weddings on a Fuji camera, which I thought was ridiculous. But once you start researching it and you figure out that it works best for a certain style, I mean, it really just snowballed. I just kept going deeper into that rabbit hole.
Speaking of going deep into the rabbit hole, Andrew really broke down how to nail your style. And I think Andrew's style is so impressive. He doesn't do posing. He shoots on these Fujis, and he just captures all these raw emotions. My biggest takeaway today, I think, Raymond, is that I loved him advising you to just stop looking at other wedding photography work, in the interim, and just take a look at work that you love outside of the genre to help you identify the things you like to look at, because that's going to influence your style. And you can just keep boiling it down until you refine it. And I think even now, when I think I've got my style, I know how I like to shoot, it can get better.
That was a perfect synopsis of the episode. I think it really doesn't matter what you're shooting on, whether it's Canon, Nikon, or Fuji. It's more about, if you're just starting off, I recommend you literally putting 4 or 5 cameras on the wall, throwing a dart at it, and then just buying that camera, because it doesn't matter.
Disclaimer, do not tape cameras to a wall and throw darts at them.
I guess I meant
print out pictures.
I guess that's what I meant, yeah.
The wall. Raymond is a crazy man.
Gaff tape can hold extremely well, man. You have no idea. But it's when you start to find your style that maybe you can find a camera that is then tailored better around how it is that you shoot. And even though, Callum, this was a very Fuji heavy themed podcast, everything that Andrew talked about applied to all aspects of photography and all brands. If you removed the word Fuji and replaced it with the word camera, I think that makes sense. It would all apply.
Olympus, Leica, Canon, Nikon, Sony, doesn't matter.
Exactly. It's really all about being comfortable with your shooting style, being confident when you show up to a wedding of how you're going to shoot it. And, I really loved his approach to just share what you want to shoot. I think that a lot of people get stuck in that, where if they see all these pictures on the internet that they like and that they want to replicate from, well-known photographers. So they try to emulate that, and then they try to put those photos on their website. And suddenly people are saying, hey, I really like that photo. It's getting a lot of recognition. And now people want you to shoot just those types of photos. And if you don't enjoy that, then take it off your website. You don't want to be known as the guy, you don't want to get burnt out on a style that you don't enjoy.
Sure.
So I think, closing this episode, talk to like a real pro. Real pro has been doing this for a long time. Really interesting start into wedding photography. We got some great tips, Fuji or not. It just so happened to be, our first Fuji guest, which I was excited about. Callum, where can people interact with this episode?
They should know where they should have to go. But if you need to be reminded, beginnerphotographypodcast.com. That's where you want to go. You can also go onto iTunes, type in Beginner Photography Podcast, hit that subscribe button, and then very nicely, I will ask, go share it so that you can get your friends listening. You guys can discuss it.
Yeah, and you know what? On top of that, now this is a lot to ask, so I only ask our dedicated fans to do this, is that in iTunes, if you leave us a rating and a review, that so greatly helps iTunes realize that we're legit, that we are putting out good content that you enjoy to listen to. And they're going to share us with more people who are going to enjoy that content. When we get a bigger community, we're going to be able to pull in maybe bigger names in the world of photography, who will be able to deliver content personalized to the beginners and a snapshot of where they were before they were as well known as they are today. And that's huge.
Raymond, I need to go and just find more style is what I'm hearing right now. We've had a great podcast. We have another one lined up. Awesome interview next week. In the meantime, if you haven't, get over to our website, get onto the newsletter, get on our website, listen to any podcast you haven't done so. Leave us a review on iTunes if you feel that what you're hearing is amazing. Until next week, I'm Callum.
And I am Raymond. It's going to be a great weekend, so get out there and start shooting.